again. Here we are at the Day in the Life of an Architect. My name is Mike Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of AIA East Bay, and tonight we have Lauren Jordan. Lauren is with HOK, and I'll start off our evening with having her what she's currently doing, and of course leading into how she got here. In the meantime, I want everybody in the room and those of you at home to think of great questions to ask Lauren. You can either put them in the chat or simply unmute yourself and ask them as you think it's appropriate. So let's start off. Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thanks so much, Mike, and hi, everyone. It's really special to be here. So I currently work at HOK, and my title there is project architect, but I work specifically with our interiors group, and my focus is on interior architecture, a lot of corporate commercial, but really non-residential interior architecture. My background is I went to Cornell University. I did a 5-year BArch program there. And lived in studio, as I'm sure a lot of you do. Built my studio family. And I was born and raised in New York City, and then went upstate to Cornell for school. And during my 4th year at Cornell, I actually studied abroad. And if any of you get the opportunity to go abroad, I highly encourage it. It is just so inspiring to travel and to be around experts from a different country and kind of learn how other cultures experience architecture and teach architecture. So I really valued that experience. And after graduating, I just packed up and moved to California and started working in actually in a contractor's office doing residential design, and then moved single family. It wasn't a good fit for me. And so I moved into the commercial arena, and I was doing a lot of interior retail work. So that's when I started focusing in interiors. And for the last 8 years, I've been pretty much focused in that, in a lot of workplace, or in laboratory buildings, in stadiums and airports. So really anything within that commercial sector. And I'll do a little bit of work on the envelope and upgrades to the building, but really focusing on building out the interiors. And that's during
I want to interrupt you for a second because we have some really interesting slides here. And so it took me a second to get them to pop up the way I wanted. So we're going to go back to a little bit of your early career, I believe. What are we seeing here?
So, and Adeline asked, I studied abroad in Rome, and it was just incredible. When I was young, I was a gymnast and a dancer. So I have a whole series of different architecture around Rome where I was doing handstands or flips or whatever. And that was just kind of like my fun way of exploring the city and seeing the different sites.
You're really setting a high bar there for the rest of us to take photos abroad. What's happening here?
So long nights in studio. Sometimes, you just have to find different postures. And I actually really liked doing ink on Mylar drawings. I just loved the texture of it, but it means you really have to get in there and focus. So I would always find interesting ways to work with my my drawing board.
Yeah. So how did you get from Cornell to where you are today?
Sure. So really through a network of alumni. Someone reached out who also had graduated from Cornell, and just had a posting saying they were hiring for some junior staff, and reached out, interviewed completely remotely from New York to San Francisco, and just was ready for an adventure. So packed up and moved when I got the call that I got the job.
Excellent. And where did you go from there?
So from that was the contractor's office where I was doing single family, where it was really day to day, you're working with homeowners, and the interaction and kind of the way we were working was design build. So homeowners that would actually hire a contractor that was doing the design and construction rather than having an architect and then hiring a contractor separately. So being in-house in the construction industry at a contractor's office, maybe isn't like a typical path for a lot of architects, but it was a great exposure to how things get built, being on site, interacting with subcontractors, and really understanding like how the sausage gets made from from inside of the factory. So that with that knowledge, I kind of decided to take the next step, that I wanted to work on some bigger projects, some more, not that single family doesn't have more complex projects, but there is a certain scale that commercial offers, and higher, construction budgets that go along with that. So a lot more leeway to do some interesting things in the commercial arena. So that's why I moved in that direction after the residential.
So why don't you tell us about what your, a typical day in the life is for Lauren Jordan?
So now is a lot like most of you. I've got my setup. We're very technology driven, right? I do a lot of work in BIM. I do quality control and drawing reviews. So my setup on the right, really like laptop and two screens, always on, always going. And since I took this picture, I did get a better office chair. So I am no longer working on a folding chair. Um, but that's a lot of what I do now. But you can see construction has continued throughout the quarantine. And I had projects that were under construction that I needed to be on site for. So I do go out and do site walks, anything that we're not able to do virtually through photos or through the contractor walking through with a video to show. I actually have to go out and physically be on site to review the work.
Gotcha. A couple people have expressed interest in asking you questions. So why don't we start off? Adeline, do you have a question?
Yeah, two things. First,
First, introduce yourself, please.
Okay. I'm Adeline. I am a third-year architecture major and a structural engineering minor, which is technically the more enjoyable path for me, at UC Berkeley. Hi, I've met a couple of you. So my question now is, how do you manage working on multiple projects, probably at different stages? And the second one is, when you're not exactly motivated to work, how do you get started?
Great questions. So for interiors projects, the pace is much faster than if you're doing ground up construction. So my projects typically go from like an 8-month construction period to like a year and a half, for if we're doing a lot of exterior work. So across that tighter construction timeframe, I try to only have like 2 to 3 projects that are under construction, and then maybe projects that are early on in the design phases. So part of my working with interiors is that my team consists of both architects, technical coordinators, and also interior designers. So there's a huge kind of design effort that I'm not fully involved with early on in the process or like in the day-to-day. So when I have projects that are in early phases and then projects in construction, the construction projects are my problem children that need all of the attention. And then I kind of later come into the projects that are in the design phases. So the balance is working with your project managers, really understanding when projects need attention and when they need, your time to be focused in. And so every morning I have a 15-minute touch base with our department director. We talk about staffing needs. We talk about what's hot and what deadlines are coming up. So I'm involved in those conversations where I can say like, hey, this project's really like getting underway. We've got a lot of things going on. I need to pull back from something else. So you really have to speak up for yourself and understand your own limitations of what you can do. And that takes a lot of time to figure out because you always, want to do everything. But you do learn over time when you have to focus in, and that's there. The second question is a little complicated because I really love what I do. It took, I did a lot of internships in college. My mom told me, if you want to stay home during the summer, you have to work. So I always found jobs either in architecture or interior design. And I, 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 I went to a couple different, expressions of the industry between the retail and the residential, small scale firm, large scale firm. So I really feel like I'm doing the job that I want to be doing, and I feel motivated because I love the projects I work on. I like the team I work with. I put myself in that situation where I don't have to fight to want to work every day. Oh, sorry, Mike, you're on mute.
You said team.
Yeah. So my team, our interiors group is about 28 people, 30 people. HOK San Francisco office is 200 people. So being in a smaller department group, it makes it feel like, you work with almost like a small firm, but you have all the resources of a big firm. And we like to do things together. We like to go to events and industry, functions and and as I said, we're interior designers, technical people, project managers, and all different age ranges and cultures. So my team now is really like the people I speak to every day and are, I went from my studio family now to my HOK family.
Excellent. Looks like Tang
Yes, hi.
has a question. Oh,
Hi.
first tell us a little bit about yourself, On.
Okay. Hi, I'm currently a third year architecture student also at UC Berkeley. And I was just wondering like how the transition between school and work was for you, and mainly the difference between like the work you did in studio and the work you would do in a firm.
Yeah, I personally found the transition really hard. I didn't feel like fully prepared to know what happens day to day to be able to, you know, take on a project and know exactly how it develops and what I need to do. But no one expects you to do that, right? That's why we have the, intern development program. I don't know what they call it anymore. AXP, IPD, I don't know. They keep changing the letters, but you know, the system for your path to licensure, which I followed, and it took me much longer to get my license than I wanted, but along that path, it's set up for you to learn in your work setting. So I really committed to the intern development program and making sure that I was vocal about, oh, I haven't done this yet. Can I get some exposure to it? So I just realized I didn't have all of the tools that I needed. Now, what I've really found valuable from school is that you learn how to to solve problems creatively, right? Our craft is our creativity, and being able to get it out of your mind and onto paper is what you're actually building in school. And that is what carries all the way through to, any sector of the profession, right? Whether it's interiors or residential, commercial, if you go and work for construction management, you're always applying those principles to what you're doing. So in school, you're getting that base, but then when you get out into the profession, you need to build the rest of those skills to actually do the day to day and feel confident in, like, when someone asks you to work on a project you've never worked on before, you have to trust those skills and that, the techniques that you've built, and then rely on that foundation of creative problem solving.
Speaking of projects, let's take a look at a couple of your projects. Tell us what we're seeing here.
Sure. So as I said, I'm doing the inside of the building, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh yeah, it's the furniture." Well, every architectural element, ceilings, walls, stairs, all of those actually fall into the technical realm and are not what interior designers are necessarily detailing and focusing on. So that blue thing there is actually a mock-up of a custom detailed stair. So we had the contractor build it so we could look at every connection and how it was going to look before they went out and implemented it. So that's a lot of what my on-site observation is about. And when projects are really running for projects with short construction durations, like maybe like 8 months, I'm probably on site one day out of the week every week during construction. So that's all about.
I've got a couple of slides here. I'm assuming one of these is one of your favorite projects. Can you?
It's my pride and joy. So Argonaut was actually built out in the old Avalon Ballroom. So there's this awesome 60s psychedelic history to it. But it was kind of a little bit old, rundown space where there was the large two-story ballroom, and on the ground floor, it was all built out, and it's actually where the cast of San Francisco Real World was living when they filmed the show. So it had all kinds of history and all of these cool things that we wanted to tie into the design. And so it was such a unique design effort. And our client was, our Argonaut is actually a marketing and advertising agency. So they understand the creative side and the creative process. So we did a lot of very meaningful things in both custom furniture pieces and then also in the restoration of the ballroom itself. So you can flip through these pretty quickly, but getting the feel and flavor and look, and there on the bottom is kind of the elevation of just their main break room that we started with. And on the next one, that's kind of how all of that came together and actually got applied into the space. And as I said, you could just continuously flip. So we had to actually restore a lot of the profiles of the ballroom space, and all of the desking systems that are used in there. This is actually their main office space. If you can imagine sitting out in an open work area that is just so.
So they used to have concerts
so
in
much
this room?
presence. Yes, yeah, Janis Joplin and all kinds of rockin' 60s is in there. So some people think it's haunted, but we just said that's just like the life and spirit that we wanted to bring back.
Adds to it. That's awesome. Gosh.
Yeah.
So I think that shows a pretty broad swath of the kind of projects you get involved in. I want to take another question. Let's see. Yitong Du?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a student in DVC, and this is my third semester as an architecture design student. I have a question that how should be a logical architect? I want to make my work to be logical, but I don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
we have some like basic logic in architecture design.
Um, I mean, it's going to sound cliche because I know a lot of people say it, but it's the phrase that form follows function. So finding the root of what you're trying to build, right? In studio, in school, you get a prompt, right? We're trying to do something and solve a problem for a specific, um, in school, it's whatever your professor has developed, but in the actual practice, it's what your client needs. So understanding the basic needs and how the building needs to function is the driver. And if you cannot rationalize, doing something in your building that is contributing to those drivers, then you're breaking that cycle of logic, right? So maybe that's a good way to start, versus kind of starting with, oh, I have a vision, right? And we all know architects, they totally get to do that. I have a vision, I'm going to find someone who will build it. Well, that's not really the case for most architects. We have a client who has needs and a a prompt or a delivery that we're trying to get to in order to satisfy that client. Did that
Excellent.
help?
Thank you. That's so helpful.
We'd love to hear that. Looks like Ali has a question for you. Ali?
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, first I will introduce myself very briefly. My name is Ali. I work for City of Oakland, and I have the privilege to be on board with Laura and Adeline and Ursula. So we have a significant presence of the board members here today. My question is regarding your future. So we are observing huge shifts in your career. So you moved from coast to coast. You shift from residential to commercial, which is a huge shift. And you also shifted from a small practice to one of the largest firm internationally. So where do you see yourself maybe in 5, 10 years? That's a cliche question, but the reason I'm asking is relates to the second question. Do you see yourself starting your own firm? If no, why? If yes, how do you think that working for a huge company or corporate like HOK could help you with that path? Thank you.
Great questions. So a lot of the resources that a large firm provides is that they also do a tremendous amount of industry research, right? They try to position themselves as global leaders in whatever industries they focus in. So when I started working on commercial workplace, commercial office space, I realized that it is just this ever-changing force. So and now with COVID, right, everything that we're doing on the side of our projects is how do we get people back into the workplace? What does the future of workplace look like? So 5 to 10 year goal is actually transitioning into that kind of research side and being more of an advocate for the human scale and how people can really kind of feel comfortable and um, feel like feel like they understand why they're in the environment they're putting themselves in, right? We all feel like different when we're in different spaces, but actually educating people in how they're getting, why are they having that experience, is what I'd really like to transition into doing as kind of a side project. So that's my 5 to 10 year frame, and that's part of what a large firm can offer, that you can kind of make these small shifts or start doing other work and get support in doing that, while also still being able to do some project work. Long term, though, my husband and I both love Italy in our own right, and our retirement plan is to just buy some property in northern Italy and just spend the rest of our days building and yeah. This is, we got married in northern Italy in a small town called Barolo. So that is long-term goal of like, how do I work internationally and get back to Italy?
Nice, nice.
And Ollie, I'm blanking on totally the second question. Help me again.
Your own practice?
Oh, my own practice. Okay, so maybe my own practice, but it would be on the international side where I'm ready to kind of take a step back. But I don't see doing it in the near term. I like having the support in things that I am not good at. And I never really had an interest in being a business owner. I have plenty of opinions about how my company should run better, but I never really wanted to take on being a business owner.
Mm-hmm. We've got a couple minutes left. Do we have any other questions? Ursula.
Hi, Lauren. So I'm Ursula, and I'm an architect at Nolantown Architects. I'm also with Lauren, Ali, and Mike on the board. And I've enjoyed working alongside all of them, learning a lot all the time. I was just thinking, if I was at college and I was getting ready to transition into, the workplace, it would be interesting to learn about people's experiences, because I personally find it's quite a challenging shift to go from many years of academia and figuring out how you're going to integrate into the workforce and be employable. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on, like, from your past experience, like what might be useful tips to share with people, like in terms of how do they build a website, how do they make themselves accessible to other companies, and how we launch ourselves from one environment to the next environment? Any thoughts on that?
I can only share my experience in doing it, which is that work in a lot of different places and do have your own projects, have your own, you're in school and you're busy, but in the summer or on breaks, have your own passion, figure out what that is, document that, include those things in your portfolio. If you enjoy painting or photography or sketching or whatever it is, a lot of you kind of need that to get into architecture school. And then a lot of people lose that. You're busy in school and you build your portfolio when you go into interviews with a lot of your schoolwork, but finding your own passion and what gets you excited and what sparks your creativity, I think really helps to make that difference, and show employers who you are and help you figure out who you are. Because if you find you're in, like I was, in a working environment and you're not feeling that passion and you end up doing so many things on the side in order to fulfill that creative outlet, then you're probably not in the right setting for you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. It's been a very, very interesting half hour. Appreciate you taking the time to share your career arc, your life arc. We are hoping that you do end up in Europe making a career and drinking great wine in Barolo. And thanks to everybody tonight for your time and your great questions. And my name is Mike Wilson. This has been A Day in the Life of the Architect, sponsored by AIA East Bay. And stay tuned for the next episode in our series, number 5, coming up in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Lauren.
Bye. Thank you.